Anyway, okay, welcome to the tutorial number 2 on management and coordination. I'm actually quite surprised that so many people are here because management and coordination sounds so boring. but we're going to make sure that it's not very boring and it's very interesting, of course. It's an essential part of what e-government is all about. Depends what you mean by it, of course, and I'm sure each of the speakers and I will also myself come in a little bit about what we mean by that. So please come in, thank you. The first one. Do I have a device that I can? Is it this one? Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody's talking about smart these days. So smart governments, smart cities, management and coordination, making it smart. I'd like to put this topic into a context first. What are the evolving roles of government or e-government? First of all, going back to basics in some ways, e-government should improve the efficiency of government. We're looking for savings. This is particularly critical now, of course, since the financial crisis, that many governments are now looking to e-government much more directly for saving money. That's always been the case, of course, but it's even more critical now. Where I live in Denmark, that's the only strategy in town. If you can't save any money, don't think about e-government. That really is an important issue, and also in the UK. Here the user is seen as a taxpayer, somebody who gives their money to the way government works, and it's important that we spend taxpayers' money wisely, don't waste it. And there's many examples of controversies around different countries about governments wasting taxpayers' money. Maybe not in your country, but certainly some of the countries I know, that's the case. So the dilemma for government is how to provide more for less in this context, because with the increasing number of social problems and social issues and all the other issues we have with aging and poverty and exclusion, government needs to be solving some of these problems, but using less money to do that. The next main issue here is what we call effectiveness, searching for quality services, developing quality services, where the user is seen as a consumer of those services. And this has been the mantra in e-government over the last 10 years or so, with new public management philosophy developing e-government, where the user is really seen as a consumer, just like they are in the private sector, expecting good services from the service provider. And very often there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of interest in making governments act in many ways just like a private commercial provider of services, and learning from that how to do it best and trying to emulate the way that that's done in the private sector. The final issue round, which encompasses them all in many ways, is the concept of governance. Good governance, where we're trying to get good governance from the public sector and government generally, where the user is seen as a citizen and a voter. And the dilemma is how to balance the different interests of all these different stakeholders in society. Now, the point of me showing that is that in one way, government has to act just like any other organization and be efficient and effective. But the roles that the people who use government, the user, whether they're citizens or businesses, are multiple and varied. Then it's not just like a commercial contract with a commercial provider. It's very much also other issues are involved in that, like the citizen as a voter, for example. So government is by nature very, very complex. It's by no means straightforward, and I personally reject the idea that government can only think of itself as another service provider, just like anyone else on the market, which is a lot of the discussion has been along those lines in the last 10 years or so. So that's really, for me, part of the context. Let's move this out of the way. This quote I like very much from Alan Mather in the UK, the e-envoy, when the UK government was starting to really push e-government in the early noughties, as we call it. E-government isn't any different from government. It just might make it better, sooner, cheaper. And that, for me, is important to remember. Very often, e-government has been seen as something separate, an add-on. But really, the only point of e-government is if it can improve the way government functions. And I mean, I'm preaching to the converted here, of course, but it's important that sometimes we remember that E should not be seen as something separate. It should be contributing to the way government functions in each of these ways here. These are some of the issues I want to look at in the next 25 minutes, before we then come on to 4 other more in-depth case studies over the next 2 hours. I'm also going to give a small example of the UK, which I think is also quite interesting, because they're going through some quite radical changes again. So what I'm trying to do is start really at the top with the strategy and the vision, and then see how some of the issues which arise from that when we try to implement those things, manage them, and coordinate them. It's clear. It's obviously important that we have a clear understanding and a vision and a strategy. So it's not a matter of just of technology, but about strong management, leadership, and human capital. ICT is just a tool, an enabler. It's not a problem solver or a panacea, which sometimes it's often taken as. And many of the examples I've seen around the world of e-government are which technology-led. The people who determine what goes on are the technologists only, rather than the politicians, or rather than the people who are involved in service development and service rollout. But we do need people to understand the technology, obviously. Yeah? So this balancing act is quite important and quite difficult, and of course it's changing fast. And one of the big challenges of any organisation, whether it's government or not, is actually keeping up with technological change, because it is changing so fast. And maybe government shouldn't try to do that in the same way that the private sector should, because it is changing so fast. Because government needs, of course, to be agile and flexible and effective and efficient, just like the private sector. But government, as I've hinted at before, has another role. Government, for many people, is the only source of stability and continuity in the lives of families and individuals, but also for the private sector, providing a stable environment for investment and a stable environment for rules and regulations. So government both has to be flexible and adaptive, but it also has to provide stability and continuity. So again, it's a complex situation. So that we should not just be driven by the technology, but by all means, let's make sure that we understand what the new technologies, developments, for example, social media, can do for government, and see how it can improve the functionings of government. Clearly, any e-government strategy must be based upon a long-term vision with objectives and a phased approach, setting targets. These are sort of standard project or strategic management approaches, which are very, very important. I mean, I mention these because in many countries they don't do it very well, actually, because for many and various reasons. But it's worth reiterating these issues. They are very, very important, because in its nature, implementing IT into the public sector, into government, is a long-term process, because it involves, and I'll come on to that in a minute, changing organisations, changing the way people work. It's something that you can't do overnight. It needs top-level and also medium-level political commitment, clearly. The most successful places I've seen e-government being rolled out are where this takes place. The UK is a good example, where Tony Blair, when he came into power in '97, set this as a priority and banged heads together and pushed down the decisions that this had to happen, and also the resources. Okay, and that worked for maybe 5 years or so. It went a bit wrong afterwards, and I'll come back to that later. But it's certainly important, particularly in the early stages, to have that top-level political commitment, and also maybe the medium level, to make sure that the middle managers, who are often the key, aren't a bottleneck. And middle management often is the bottleneck in implementing any changes in e-government. It's also important to see government within the bigger picture, as I've hinted at before, within the public sector context as a whole, within government as a whole, but also in wider society. Why are we implementing e-government? We want a better economy. We want a more open democratic society. We want better support to excluded people and people in poverty, people who have problems. Although we must see e-government in that context. It's not just putting services online and like tax services or changing your driving license. Government must be seen in the wider context. The justification of e-government is that it does those things as well. We need to assess and manage risks and take some sensible risks. Government is often seen as being very risk averse. of course, as are many Western economies compared, for example, with the US. I don't know how true that is, but that's certainly the case. Having a proper understanding of how to assess and take risks in a government context is, I think, is very, very important. But it's very, very difficult, of course, because people don't like taking risks because it's dangerous. Not just civil servants, but also politicians. And this is one, particularly politicians, because the next election is just round the corner, for example. So how do we make government a long-term project if we don't understand and grapple with some of these things? Understand your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, which is, again, standard important things to think about. Some of the things which are often forgotten is it's very important when you're planning and rolling out e-government to think about some quick wins. This is very important because it shows that the money you're spending is being used wisely. It has some immediate impacts which the users, whether they're citizens or businesses, but also the civil servants who are working with this and the politicians can see that there are some relatively quick benefits from the money and the effort they're putting into it, rather than waiting, 3 or 4 or 5 years. I've just talked about the fact that e-government is a long-term project, but getting quick wins can be extremely useful politically and also in terms of the morale and motivation of staff. At the European level, for example, the quick win is e-procurement. I was going to say it's seen as easy to roll out. It is actually in some ways, but it's also quite difficult. But when it's done successfully, as it is being done in many countries in Europe and has been, it can actually give you extremely good returns on money saved, both for the government itself, but also for the companies or the people tendering for government services. So that's a very, very good example in the European context. Also, key enablers. Those are the things which may not be sort of very sexy for civil servants or for the public, but are necessary to release and unlock other wider impacts. For example, it's clearly important we have electronic identity management, skills and awareness and interoperability. These things which cut across, which are underlying issues, but need to be tackled, and they're key to anything that happens really in e-government. And again, the European Union has focused on this certainly since the year 2000 or 2005, on actually making sure that at the European level some of these key enablers are in place, and then you can come on and build proper citizen services or business services on top of that. Looking at the sort of management of the organisation and the staff, etc., clearly you need a strong, flexible and sensitive management with collective decisions where necessary. And again, this is standard management practice. One of the important lessons that I've seen around the world is that you sometimes lose, as a manager pushing through e-government, you lose sight of your internal organisation and making sure that you keep staff on side, informing about what's going on, listening to what they're saying, making sure that they feel some sense of ownership about what's happening. I've seen lots of e-government projects fail because that does not happen. I mean, the commitment of staff and support for staff is essential. Staff really are your key resource in all this. It's not the technology, it's the staff, So staff need to be treated and handled with respect but care, but also pushed along where necessary. It's also the transparency is not just something which is external to government or e-government. It's something that needs to be transparent within government as well. So staff at all levels know what's going on, what they're required to do, and can be part of that strategy and feel as though they're contributing to it and seeing the results of it as it comes through. Obviously, you need basic things again, like a financial plan, a business plan, making sure the sustainability is there, and focusing on return on investment, of course, but also balancing that with public value. And this is a very difficult thing to do, especially now, given that we're in the age of austerity in many countries in Europe, certainly, and in North America, where it's very, very difficult to think about the longer term. In government now, for example, in Denmark now, it's just return on investments which you're looking at. They're not really concerned with long-term public value, which I think is a shame. It's a big discussion, but this is hopefully it will change again in the near future. Leadership is clearly important, as it is in any organisation. It's the vital energy which drives any change. Having leaders at every level who can actually motivate, show the way to go, engage with the staff who are surrounding them. That really is one of the keys to the whole thing. And again, human resources, your greatest asset. Changing the way people work, flexible working, new types of work. What I've often seen happening in many countries is that a lot of work is quite routine type of work, and these, you know, filling in forms, filing, archiving, these sorts of things can clearly be automated and done by a computer, put in a database. And they can easily be moved around between different departments, of course. So that sort of thing is clearly open for the sensible and effective allocation of IT. But it does actually take away tasks from many traditional civil servants. And I've seen lots of examples where you're putting in e-government and you suddenly realize you don't need half the staff. What do you do with the staff that you don't need? There's a lot more specialist work which can take place, of course, which can't be automated. So frontline roles like nursing and teachers and police and people who are dealing with caseworkers who are dealing with people who have social problems and things like that. But so the changing nature of public sector work, sector work, because of ITs being implemented in the back office, is very, very important. And changing the skill requirements of the public sector. Making sure that the individuals have flexible skills and competence. It's not just IT, although that's very important. It's also people skills, so that civil servants can actually engage with citizens and with each other in a sort of sensible way, rather than just in a bureaucratic way. We've moved really on from the bureaucratic paradigm. We're moving much more onto a collaborative and participative paradigm with IT, especially with social media. How can civil servants, especially frontline staff, change the way they work in that way? And it's a mindset issue as well, not both with managers and leaders, but also with the civil servants. And public service ethic. Very rarely people mention about the public service ethic. But in Europe, anyway, we have a strong tradition going back a couple of 100 years about the public service ethic, that the public deserve fair and equal treatment and to be listened to. And this is an ethical issue which I think is also important in the public sector context, which sometimes gets lost, I think, when we just talk about making things more efficient, you know, actually treating people well. There's a lot of new developments in e-government about treating people well, about developing better relationships with citizens and users, where IT can be a tool and can be an enabler to help you do that. Releasing people from back office functions, what we call paper pushing, releasing them to front line contact with users and citizens, but supported by the IT. For example, civil servants can now go out into the community, out on the streets, out to old people's homes, people with problem families, out to businesses, and they can be in touch with the office in their pocket, access databases, access forms, and they're actually providing a much more sort of human service, intimate service where you can build relationships with the citizens and the users that you meet, rather than just treating them as sort of standard objects and expecting them to come to the town hall. So for me, that is also e-government. For many people, a caseworker visiting an old person in their home is not e-government, but if they've got intelligence in their pocket or on their laptop where they can access information, make decisions, fill in forms, that is also e-government. It's improving the richness and the quality of frontline services. So this is really, in a sense, what I mean by the public service ethic in a European context. It's also important we focus strongly on organisational learning, where the collective knowledge of civil servants about how to use IT, how to change, how to treat citizens, how to develop better services, that is not lost. We grow and nurture it. Although we have huge problems of unemployment now in Europe and in other countries, there is a talent crunch coming now for two reasons. First of all, many public sector workers have been around for a long time, the baby boomers, and they're all retiring now. And in Denmark, for example, despite the unemployment, I think about 15% more, so 20% of public sector workers are due to retire or are already retiring over the next few years. And all that experience is going to be lost. How do we capture that inside the organization to make sure that their experience is not lost? The other part of that is, of course, that many of these people who are retiring don't have many IT skills. They're like me, they've grown up without IT. But the next generation coming along, and my two sons who are in their 20s, they've grown up with the internet. I mean, they think about, they want the same contact with the public sector as they do with their ordinary lives and their contact with commercial providers. So when the next generation comes along, but also as workers, as civil servants in the public sector, they're going to expect to want to work very, very differently. And they're going to expect that the public sector also interacts with them very, very differently. So there are big issues around this. How do we make sure that we keep that organizational learning? And always remembering, of course, that there's more relevant talent outside any organization, including government, however big it is, than inside. So crowdsourcing, how to access knowledge and resources and creativity and ideas from outside. Part of your organizational learning pool, it's not just the people who work in government, it's the partners, the private sector companies, the civil society organizations, but also users and citizens themselves. How to make sure that their collective knowledge can be used beneficially to develop the way that the government is managed and coordinated and acts vis-a-vis the society with which it has to serve. I always like to think of the public sector going through what I call 3 phases. An early stage which is very much cost-driven, and I've talked a little bit about that. A middle stage which is very much, or should be, user-driven. Maybe if we could argue that we're between those two there. And the late stage, which is much more value-driven, driven by sort of values in society and higher-level policy issues. These can, I think, be linked quite nicely to the different sorts of innovation which takes place in the public sector. Very often you see when you get new technology like IT into an organization, you can immediately see how to do existing things faster, cheaper, better. And that was the early mantra. We can speed up things, we can do existing things, as I say, better, maybe with IT. The next step is where we start to see how users use the technology, but also civil servants, how we can do new things with the technology, offer new types of services in new ways, and not just do the same things but online. I mean, a good example from the UK is the Fix My Street online service, if you know that, which is where anybody can go online, doesn't matter where they are, and just put in a problem they see in their street, maybe a broken paving stone or graffiti or an abandoned car or a lamp that doesn't work, and just type in the problem, their postcode, or even take a picture with a mobile phone and send it in. And they don't have to know how the public sector is organized. So the website does that, the intelligence of the website does that for them. But the website can then track and trace the way that the public sector uses that and give them feedback. And that's quite a new type of service. Previously, you would have to know which department organized, which level, where the town hall was. Now you can do it much more easily. But this service was not offered by the government. It was offered by a civil society organization called My Society. But they were seeing the power of the technology, how it could improve the way that it offered services to citizens and how citizens can use that and actually make a better job. Another big issue for me in the way that the public sector operates and the way we need to think about managing it and coordinating it is the constant discussion about whether we should centralize things or decentralize things. You know, the centralized things, you can get a lot more of sort of top-down and rationalization in the system. I like to think about it as there are some good things about centralization. You can ensure minimum standards. You can ensure simplicity, and you can ensure efficiency, where everything takes place in the same way, basically one size fits all. But that's one of the disadvantages. It can become quite bureaucratic, it can become quite remote. And this is really the story of e-government, I think, over the last, certainly in the early days, up until a few years ago. But a more decentralized and distributed approach to e-government really is looking to decentralize and looking at the responsiveness of government to particular conditions on the ground, particular types of users, particular localities, where e-government can put into effect subsidiarity principles, where things change depending on where you are. It can be much more diverse and it can be accountable. The problems there, of course, is that you can have what we call the postcode lottery. Depending where you are, the quality of the service will vary. And that can be a big issue, of course. And there are many externalities involved in that. If you have some problems in your location which you don't deal with, they could spill over and affect other nearby locations, for example. And it becomes very, very complex and difficult to manage. But this constant balance between centralization and decentralization, I think, is very important. And bringing IT into this actually changes the parameters and changes how that works to some extent. Clearly you need a balance. There's no right answer to this, but I think you need a balance between those two, and that's always going to be, that's something which is not finalized or finished. It's something which is an ongoing challenge. And you see it coming up as an issue all the time when you're thinking about people, you read about e-government projects and processes in different countries. So this rebalancing, which I think is very important for management and coordination, we've got the supply side, or the back office, which is really about coordination or enabling. Many of those issues should be centralized, I think. Yeah? That needs to support the front office, the content, which, other things being equal, should probably often be decentralized, because you're providing services to people in their local communities, in different localities, on the ground, and different types of communities, you know, whether elderly people, disabled people, people in need of care, but also personalizing services to make sure they fit individuals. And one of the things it seems to me is that we ought to focus on is making the back office, making it smaller and smarter, making the machine, if you like, operate efficiently, work well, but making it small in terms of resource and staff as necessary, but still working well. Whereas the front office should, in some ways, get bigger and better. The people offering services out in the community, whether they're online or face-to-face, government is really about the interface with society, offering services, and how do we do that well. That's where the focus should be. But obviously, of course, having the adaptive capacity and being able to redeploy these resources, I think, is very, very important. Agile and flexible government, but remember that we need continuity and stability as we go through, as I tried to say before. Interoperability and integration, they're critical issues here, of course. Interoperability is not just technical. It's also about semantics, organisation and governance, political, legal, all these sorts of issues. And this is reflected in the European Interoperability Framework, which the new version has recently been released. Also integration, how to integrate government both horizontally and vertically, making joined up government a reality, so that users, whether they're citizens or businesses, don't care or aren't interested or shouldn't be interested in the way the public sector is operated and the way it works and the way it's managed and coordinated. They just want the public sector to function well for them. They just want good services, as the example I gave with Fix My Street. They don't care who's responsible for doing it. They just want their problem solved. So government, if it's going to be serving the society properly, needs to be integrated both vertically and horizontally, but also with the other partners it has, whether in the private sector or in the civil sector. And we often talk about public-private partnerships. I've been banging on for 10 years. It's also about public-civil partnerships, particularly in the context of government. Many of the services we offer are for maybe groups in society or regions which are disadvantaged in some way. And many of the keys, the intermediaries to those sorts of user groups, are often civil society organisations, as well as businesses as well, and social entrepreneurs. And government, I think, is increasingly realising the need to integrate and work with those. And that poses, of course, huge management and coordination problems for government. How to do that? How to partner with organisations outside your own, which may have quite different objectives and views and ways of operating, management regimes and political regimes. How to do that well. This is a huge challenge for government, of course, as we go forward. Standards and building blocks and new services are clearly important in all this, and people can spend hours discussing and writing about this, using open standards and open software where possible, of course. But the strong move we're having now towards standardized building blocks, whether it's software, applications, processes, which doesn't have to be reinvented each time. One of the big issues that many local governments or ministries, they're developing services or applications or resources to do the same things and just replicating work and wasting effort. It needs to be done across government, and then you can build bespoke solutions. So you can build your own solutions you need for different contexts, for the different agencies and for different different user groups, making those scalable so that you can use them in different contexts. So I think one of the big things I see in government now is sharing things which all parts of the public sector need to do in the same way. Whether it's infrastructures, cloud computing is clearly the issue here, how we can share as much as possible within the cloud context. It's not just server capacity, it's other things that can be up in the cloud. It can be service components, it can be widgets, it can be applications, how to share those things in a sensible way. But also, as I said before, with other stakeholders, other actors, not just other government or public sector actors, but also people who are putting those resources and putting those service components up in the cloud, which we can all use, or which the public sector can use, or maybe even citizens on their own behalf can use. So this is really one of the strong developments taking place now. It's seen in the cloud computing context, of course, as a way of saving money. I think the jury's a bit still out on that, actually. I don't know. There may be. I think there are some good examples where cloud computing have saved some money, but there are, of course, huge security and other issues involved in that as well. But sharing resources and sharing data is clearly a very important issue. Not reinventing the wheel, not wasting resources and doing the same thing more than once. And this leads on to the open data sort of issue, which I won't go into, but of course, but we know this is something which has been very important in the last few years and become increasingly important. The huge amounts of public sector data, which the public sector itself hasn't used very well, starting to use it better, hopefully, but is also now being in many countries, particularly the UK and also the US, but other countries, Australia, and also increasingly across Europe, is now being made available for other user communities, but also the private sector to use to develop new types of services, whether they're commercial services or whether they're services which just can serve specific needs. This is a whole new sort of layer, if you like, on top of e-government, which we're just embarking on. But how, again, does government coordinate and manage those developments? I'll give you, at the end, in a few minutes, I'll give you some examples from the UK where some of these issues are now actually trying to be implemented. Analytics is one of these new management tools as well, which it's really a new name for a familiar activity. All this public sector information, all this data which government has at its disposal, and if it starts to combine that across government, assuming that the legal framework is in place to enable to do that, and of course that's always going to be an issue, and security issues are also always going to be important. But how can the public sector use that information in a sensible way? We often talk about the information explosion, information overload, not just within government but also as individuals. I think for me it's really a problem of filter failure rather than information overload. I think information has always been there in the past, but it's a question of how we use it, how we sort it, and how we filter it, if you like. So filter failure and how we develop better filters and better ways of using that government, I think that information is a critical issue. And analytics are seen now by many as a core management activity, using that information wisely, both within government itself, but also user information from the other aspects where the private sector operates, for example, but elsewhere in society. How that information can be useful really in three ways. First of all, describing what the data is in a sense, but also filtering it, making sure that the data we have can be useful in relation to the tasks and the responsibilities which government has. Also using it to make predictions, which is really the next step. We can start to say, okay, if we implemented this particular policy, what would be the predicted outcome given the data we've had on previous policies and their implementation. I don't know of many governments which are doing that yet, but it's starting to be something which is being seen as very important. And the third one is prescriptive techniques, i.e. this is what we want to do. How do we use the data and how do we facilitate the policy and the laws to make sure it happens? Yeah? Actually using the data in a very sort of proactive way like that. Now all this sounds good on paper and it is very interesting and promising developments, but there are big issues around in that, of course, not just with security of data but also quality of data, I think. Do we have data which actually provides us with information which is accurate, timely, useful? Are we using it in the right way? In a sense, data is just like statistics. You can misuse it just as easily as you can use it well, of course. So this big data explosion, which had many promises for government and the way the public sector operates, also is, I think, hugely problematic in many ways. We need to go down this route, clearly. And many of the big IT companies like IBM and Microsoft are pushing forward their tools and their consultancy support in this area. But it is potentially something which I think the public sector needs to stand back sometimes and say, are we doing this the right way? You know, because data can't capture everything. Maybe, well, that's an issue for discussion. Performance management. Finally on this, I think obviously measuring what you've been doing and measuring what you're doing as you go along is always very important. Key performance indicators, return on investment. In Europe we've been doing a lot of supply side measurements since 2001. We're now at the European level, 27 member states. We're now in Europe since 2008 looking at the demand side, on the user take-up aspects of e-government, how citizens and businesses are using e-government, but also now there's been some piloting of open and transparent government taking place, and that will probably be rolled out next year. Actually, this year, for the first time, 2011, there's not going to be a European e-government benchmarking in order to both to save money, the cost-cutting issue again, but also to try to implement some of these new measurement frameworks which need to be put in place. What's the purpose of measuring? I think there's four ways really we need to think about. We need to make sure that we measure, and as I said before, there are lots of issues around measurement which I won't go into. You know, whether it's accurate, whether you're measuring the right things, whether you can get the data. Clearly all those things need to be looked at. But we need to we can use measurement to help us set priorities and make sure we're going in the right direction. This sort of ex-ante evaluation approach. If we do this, what can be the expected results? And we need good data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative data, preferably quantitative, to do that sort of thing. Monitoring as you go along is clearly important, so to make sure that what you want to do is actually doing the things that it should be doing. But then if other issues come up, that you can adapt to that quite quickly. Retrospective, i.e. ex post impact assessment. Have you actually done what you said you'd do? And do you have the data and the measurement frameworks to make sure that you can do that properly? But also accountability. If you can publish data which shows that you've used the investments you've put into e-government well, politicians like that very much, of course, but also the public and the citizens and the businesses who pay through their taxes. We do. You know, government is always, it ultimately has to be accountable, which is something which the private sector doesn't necessarily have to do. The private sector is accountable to its shareholders, maybe the law. The public sector is accountable to us as citizens, of course, and that's a big difference. I'll just, as I think time is getting short, obviously we need to think about different aspects of the policy life cycle on this. And I think finally on this, I can see two ways that measurement is changing in e-government as well as more generally, particularly in e-government. Moving up the policy value chain, we've measured in e-government very often, focused very much on inputs and outputs. How much resource have we spent on e-government? How many new services have we developed? You know? So inputs and outputs, they're easy to measure. You can do that. But they don't tell us very much, and that's one of the reasons why we've changed in Europe over the last few years. Focusing much more down now on outcomes and impacts. What has been the results on users? How many users are using e-government? Has it improved their lives? Are users more satisfied with e-government services? Do we get solve citizens' problems better by using e-government services? Are people served better in their communities? Are businesses being able to become more efficient because they can go online rather than do things by paper, for example? Those are the sorts of things which we're now having to measure in e-government. And with some success, I think, it's starting to happen. So there's a clear focus there. Also down the hierarchy, sort of a more centralized, central government approach. How much money have you spent? How many targets have you hit? But thinking much more closely now about measuring on the front line. Individual departments providing services in the community. So the frontline staff who are providing services, what impacts are they having on the citizens they're serving, on the businesses they're serving? Maybe even users being involved much more directly in measuring the impacts of e-government, rather than it being done from a centralized ministry, for example. So you're seeing all these sorts of much more on the front line, small scale measurement taking place as well. Right, finally, I'd like to just check the time. I think we're doing okay. Just have a quick look at what's going on in the UK, which illustrates some of these issues. The UK has been an e-government leader for 10 years or so now. I think it's probably about #1 in Europe, depending on which measurement framework you use, and it's about #4 or 5 in the latest UN rankings. But it's had huge problems with e-government. And it's recently had a new government last year and started to refocus its efforts. This is the sort of strategy. I won't go into it in detail. You can see there are basically 4 main strands, one looking at the technology, one at the governance and the power relationships there, the organisation structure, and then the consumer propositions. The UK is still thinking about talking about users as consumers only, right? It's still the mantra in the UK, as opposed to citizens or whatever. Yeah? The idea is to move from public services all in one place, the idea of a one-stop shop on the website, on the portal, moving that to a new vision, government services wherever you are. Thinking about the growth of mobile services, pushing services out to people wherever they are in a locality, depending on who they are and what they want to do. So much more intelligence in the system. But also people able to pull services, maybe through mobile phones, but other devices as well, depending on who they are and what they want to do. So much more personalized, differentiated approach to e-government services, as compared to now, all in one place, sort of standardized services offered on a portal. In fact, we can see that though the direct.gov eGov portal is one of the best in the world, by all accounts, the e-government services in the UK, only 10% of people find e-gov services in the UK through that portal, which is very, very low. Most people are Googling or finding their own way to the services. Right? And that's another story, but it's a very interesting story as well. But I think the UK government has woken up to that fact. Now, very interestingly, back in May this year, it's only about 4 or 5 months ago, they started a new approach to developing portals or e-government services online. The UK government started the first alpha version of an eGov website. Not even a beta version, but an alpha version. Just experimental and getting people to look at it and comment on it. On the basis of that and the comments and the discussion that's had amongst the different communities, they're now publishing or launching a beta version of the new website in January or February. And then we take it from there. So actually developing even your websites and your portals based upon discussions with the community of users, businesses and small companies, and social entrepreneurs and hackers. You know, in some ways it's quite an innovative and new approach, and I'll illustrate that a bit more. There have been huge problems, and some of these you may remember, you may recognize from your own countries, that government and IT has a really bad name in the UK. It does in Denmark as well, surprisingly, even though Denmark's much more successful and a smaller country. Wastage of big e-government projects. The NHS, the National Health Service backbone, which has cost billions of pounds, has just last week been scrapped officially because it just wasted too much money. The real problem isn't the IT. The real problem was that the civil servants and the managers in government were not good enough at developing contracts and making sure that the contracts with the big private sector providers were properly implemented and properly coordinated and managed. That has been the real problem. Because if you know anything about the private sector as well, in private sector IT projects also often fail, but we don't hear about them, of course, right? Because it's commercial secrecy. So it's really more an issue around large IT projects in large organizations. They're very, very difficult to implement. But too little attention at the top on big projects. So much more continuity. Procurement takes far too long. Systems rarely reused or adapted for reuse. The issues I was talking about before, reusing basic systems rather than reinventing the wheel. This is in the UK, which is meant to be one of the leaders in the world. They're starting now to recognize this. Very, very poor interoperability in infrastructure. So I'll just, because time is getting on, I'll just talk about number 5 or 6 there. The idea now is to create a distribution network beyond government using application program interfaces to allow third parties to present content and transactions. So much more reliant on the ecosystem of other potential service providers and developers, not just government itself. That's really the focus now, but very often on small e-government projects, not on large ones. So the large ones are now not liked very much, not accepted. They waste too much money. They're difficult to control, difficult to manage. Small, much more small and bottom up, using the developer community much more. Being agile, they're setting up what they call a SWAT team, setting up government skunk works. You know what that is? These are sort of very informal, independent, non-bureaucratic small teams of people who develop services. Not just from government, but from other organizations as well, outside government. This is now the official government policy, just back in, I think, in May or April this year. This is now the way forward. Now, this is a response to some of the problems of management and coordination I mentioned before, which weren't working very well. Now, the UK is quite a big country, 70 million people, not the biggest in the world, quite complex in many ways, very successful in e-government, and now hitting a brick wall in some of these issues here. And this is one way, it's quite a right-wing government, but this is one way of trying to solve those sorts of problems. I don't know how they will pan out in the other countries we're going to look at, but that's really a new departure, I think, for what's going on. So I'll stop there, and I'll now invite the other speakers to make their presentations, probably quite different from mine, I think, on how e-government's developed in their own countries, particularly in relation to sort of management and coordination issues. So I think have Colombia first, shall we, on that? Okay. If you can turn that off now, we can have the... I mean, I think we can take a discussion and questions at the end if you have any, rather than sort of interrupt. Okay.
Okay. Oh, no. Don't function. Hello. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome. This presentation is about the coordination and management of e-government in Colombia. I am the director of the program in Colombia. The content is the strategy, the vision, the objectives, principal objectives, and the achievement of progress, and finally a conclusion about the role of the e-government in Colombia. It's my country, it's Latin America, so America, Colombia. This is principal information about our country. 32 statement locals and 1,100 small municipalities we have. And in framework of the e-government in Colombia, we have a principal ICT plan of Latin America now. Tomorrow, our vice minister have a possibility to show you about the main objective of this digital living plan. But the most important for this plan is the increase by 4 times the number of the internet connection in Colombia, to 2.2 millions or 8.8 millions of the users for internet in Colombia. And this plan have a digital ecosystem. And the very interesting for this digital ecosystem have 2 axes, very important: supply and demand of the digital citizens. I have a 4 stages about the infrastructure, services, applications, and users. And the role of the government online is the principal application of services online for all the people. In general, the vision of the government online is the state built by and for the prosperity of the all Colombian through by user of the ICT. Our principal purpose is government online is a strategy of the national government led by the Minister of ICT to build an efficient, transparent, and participate government which collaborates with the whole society. For us, very important with the points of the transparency, participation, efficiency, of course the role of the whole society to promote the possibility to take advantage of the ICT. In the impact of the government online, Colombia have the competitiveness and the governance of the public sector. And a specific objective have 5 to drive efficiency and collaboration across and between the government agencies as well as society as whole. And second, to contribute to the increase of the transparency in the public administration. For us, the role of the transparency is very, very important. And they promote the citizens' participation and engagement by the use of the ICT. And finally, for that is very important to impact in the competitiveness and in general to role of the government improve the quality of the life of the all Colombian people. And we define our online governmental ecosystem, have a supply and demand. But that's very important and understand with the focus of the government online is the people. With the government listen to the people all the time, have the possibility to development application to respond to the people's needs. Of course, if necessary in occasion, this application have a change of the procedures of the internal public administration and in the back half in the infrastructure. And the ecosystem life all the time with the people receive solution with your needs, maybe have all the time good services for the people. This is the international environment of the government in Colombia. This is the national readiness. We have a leader in America Latina in ICEGOV and number 21 in the world. A leader in America Latina in e-participation and number 9 in the online services in this measure. And the national environment, the most important is actually the government online is strategic part of the national development plan for the president's hands. For us it's very important for in Colombia, the national plan has a law. If the possibility to govern online as part of the law, other part is very important for the budget, for the political decision, for the legal condition. Government online is a fundamental life of the Life Digital Plan, is the National ICT Plan of Colombia. All the time we have articulate with the governance and administrative efficiency policy. The role of the government online is the possibility to materialize the role of the efficiency in the government and in general the policy of the good administration. It's one of the fundamentals of the ICT law, the ICT. If we have all the time to articulation, to coordination with 2 policies, for us is very important. Competitiveness policy and understand the government online in Colombia is a strategic policy. As a strategic policy too in the framework of the good governance. It has the possibility to offer good services, transparency, participation with the Colombian people. Key success factors, sorry. First is a holistic approach with all together. All governmental agencies has a responsibility for the government online in Colombia. No, this is no responsibilization about one entity or one program. It's responsibilization about the all public administration. Accompaniment is very important all the time. Have a diagnosis and action plans with the project, with the government online in the future. Appropriation is very important for us. Dissemination and support for servitors and citizens about the role of the government services. Transversal solutions, standard based on the solution for collaboration with between different institutions, and monitoring and measure and evaluation all the time. Systematic approach to analyze the progress, the use, the quality, and the impact of the government online. It's very important for us listen the citizen all the time. We have a system with all the people listen what is the value of the government online. Normally we listening about the mistruth and speak the government resistance of the OCT, multi-channel stakes, or in the case of the business or in the case of the institution. But the most important, we all the time listen with the people and the business on the servitors and make a decision about the advance of the government online. For us, it's very important to understand the strategy in Colombia is based to ongoing efforts taking into account for the public administration agencies across the country are responsibility for the implementation. Clear method. We have a decree, presidential decree, a manual of the implementing government online. In each entities publics, we have a committee to coordination the government online in different institutions, methodologies for diagnose and action plan. We job together for different control institutions, and government online is a policy public. We define 5 phases of the government online: information, interaction, transaction, transformation, and democracy. And its responsibility for the all police institutions have this responsibility. Of course, for us it's very important to join a company for the local polling entities. The role with the interaction between the citizen and the mayors for us is very important to promote services in local municipalities. A standard based solution across collaboration, interoperability platform. We have a common language for sharing information based on XLMN. Executive online reporting, online payment, online authentication, of course, technological infrastructure. Monitoring, all the time monitoring the use, quality, and impact for the role of the government, for continuous improvement, to analyze, understand the situation, to compare with these standard objectives and targets, to provide feedback of the stakeholders, measure the result and impacts. We have all years we have a document to show the impact of the government in Colombia. For example, this is the current status of the government in Colombia. This is the balance scorecard. This is the national level and local level, territorial level, and different phases. This is the information of the different public institutions. We have information in the different areas of the public administration. This is the different phases, and this is the evolution of different phases: information, interaction, transaction, transformation, and democracy. And have information of, for example, for the education area. For the possibility have information about the ministry or the different institutions to include in this area. Of course, this method of the phases is necessary to have evolution. Now we are evolution to a maturity model of online government 2010-2019. And the different axes of the model maturity have the role of the information to open government, open data, to role of the services online, and to role of the democracy. And maturity for initial, basic, advances, and continuous innovation all the time. Of course, for the new role of the e-government in Colombia, the innovation is very important to promote this. Now, our thematic with the collaboration of society, our priority have three principal components. First, information, the role of the opening data, the role in the real services of the OpenGov, access information through multiple channels, not exclusive by internet, is mobile phones or TDT. It's very important for us is the usability. In the role of the transformation, paperless policy, green IT, cloud computing by the government, information security, open services market to open data on the government, electronic notification service for vulnerable population. And in democracy, for the companies, we have a social control, troubles with solution the problems of the people, and the evolution to the traditional role of the e-gov to e-governance. The possibility to build the solution of the whole society to listen and to receive the support of the all people. Academy, of course, private sector, of course, and public sector. It's our priority for e-gov in Colombia. And one examples, the portal of the government, we have a 700 number of the visit with the website per month. The 19% of the people have tramites online in this portal. This is the information of the e-procurement system. All the time evolution about the consultant, the information for the public process. This is the evolution, for example, for the procedures and services online. In the last year, our increases in 40% in the number of the services and tramites online. We have 700 services and procedures online. This is an example for the judicial records online. For example, 5.7 million of the people use these services online. Or this is the international trade single window for the whole process of the import and export in my country is online. This is 18 entities have a collaboration between internal and external to offer services to the companies. Or this is very important for us is the Colombian action is the exercise of the build the solution for the poor people to listen to the people all the time, have the possibility to advance in make solutions about the role of the technology to offer good services to the people. Or this is, for example, a georeferential system to promote the tourism in one locality of my country. Is the government to the role of the topography, reef, water system. Or this is the services to offer information when the people need information about the streets or the rivers, maybe. This is the single window Ministry for Education, all process of the education area between across, of the one single window. And we try to define actually to investment and investigation about the role of the TDT. This, for example, is information of the jury vote consultation in the TDT. And it's very important for us all the time measure with the advance the Gulf in Colombia. This is the information about our system of the monitoring and evaluation of the Gulf in Colombia. And this is statistics about the evolution where the people the people know government online uses services of government online, 2010, 2009, and 2008 to compare. And this information is the people use of the online government. The advances is very important in my country. Actually, 19% of the people know and use the government, the services of the gov. And this is we have document and investigation of the people response about use the the services or the procedures of the government ICEGOV in Colombia. Okay, principles, conclusions. First, we have clear the citizen at the center of the state. And all of the efforts for the look for improvement to quality of the life of the people. Second, it is essential to have a clear method based in legislation and regulations, as well as strategies for advancing of the entities. 3, we must have a clear diagnosis now about the base level of the entities to be able to measure the impact the strategies of development. As important as the development of procedures and services online are the scope and technical assistance to entities for the ownership and the transformation of the organizational culture on same. We need to establish communication strategies, good strategies, the communication, and consistent research to citizens to promote the use of the procedures and services performed. The online government is a collaboration between all agencies. It's the responsibility to the whole society. Of course, for us, the leadership is the government, the president, the minister. But it's very important the role of the private sector, and this is very important with the role of the academy, the universities, and in general of the all citizens. And finally, of course, the online government is more than technology. With that, to change the culture, with that, the procedure, the possibility to build a good governance. We have a possibility to integrate the public policy of the ICEGOV to the all public policies in health, in education, in transportation, whatever. The most important is understand the role of the ICEGOV is to promote a new society. And this is our compromise with my country and the possibility to build the present and understand the future is now. It is necessary to change the mentality and the culture of the time in function with the quality of the life of the all Colombian people. Thanks.
Well, so far we agree on a lot. the big question.
My name is Arvo and I'm director of ICEGOV2011. What I'm just planning to do today is just give some short overview about some of the key issues in Estonia where we started to develop our organization and also picture around strategies and legal framework and financing, and also have some possibilities to analyze these things and comparing the things with some of the countries we are working in ICEGOV2011. And I think that to understand it a little bit better, I just have to tell you a few words about my background as well. So my background is technology actually, but I was working most of the time in government, starting from 1993, where I just government of Estonia decided just to manage e-government, or actually start to coordinate e-government, and starting from policies and organizational setup and legislation, etc. And then really just my first task was in 1993 to figure out how it should be done. We started from pretty empty place, but we had a lot of nice people and good knowledge in Estonia. And then I was just working till 2005, but just moved to ICEGOV2011, which is non-government, non-profit, and just now also one of the main organizers here at the conference. So I'm telling you some of my experiences, and I'm not stopping very much on political decisions today or what we're just going to do in future, but just stressing some of the points which we see which was positive, were positive in Estonia, and which mistakes we made, and which mistakes can be avoided as well. So as usually when we are just looking to this e-government as a big picture, quite often we are starting to talk about the policy and strategy, and it has been one of the pillars also most of the developments of most of the countries. But when just looking to this strategy side, we're just looking to organizational aspects, legal framework, fiscal framework, and technical architecture. And just in the very beginning also, one of my personal experiences was that when politicians are starting to look to this picture, they are starting to think about technical things. So, and even just some international organizations are pushing too much on technology sometimes because they would like to see fast electronic services. And of course, it's obvious that everybody's just looking for good services, but then without all the other framework, you just start to make piece by piece these services, and at the end you will just go into the situation where all this framework doesn't work, and it's very difficult just to follow the policy here. So some of the aspects here in this picture are very important, but then now just start to explain some of the things which has been very important in Estonia, and which after analysis I just think that some of good experience we got during this almost 20 years of development. And as Jeremy told also, that it's quite interesting question is that how much policy and strategy is important, how much it is really driving this situation. And when we are just looking, many countries where international organizations start to support, and they are just in first phase very much focusing on strategy and policy. But when you don't think about, when you don't have organization structure around, it's almost nonsense just to do it. It's a strategy and policy is, in my understanding and experience of Estonia, it's mainly process, like discussion and process, not the paper at the end. And this is has been one of the interesting questions also in Estonia. And we started in 1993, and I got a lot of critics from all the political levels at how you can work without good strategy. And then we made the first strategy in Estonia in 1998, which was reflecting the development. And I think that it's something which is especially interesting in so-called new countries, where we didn't have very long tradition in horizontal management and policy implementation. It means that you can make whatever policies, but the implementation doesn't work. And we don't have also, we didn't have very long experience in strategic planning, which might be working very well in some developed countries. Like I remember from Finland, and when in Finland they are making e-government policy, all the organizations start to implement it. But in case of new countries, or also in Estonia, policy doesn't mean that it should be implemented. So it has been one of the interesting things that I saw, and of course today we are talking, everybody's policy is very important, really, it is. But without all the structural components, it's no sense. So actually, it's of course it's good to have, but it's not really driving the things. So in case of Estonia, we just saw quite often policy-driven development, not development driven by policy. No, so actually we have this development-driven policy. It means that we just made steps, we made practical projects, and then later on we just put it on the policy paper. And it's also quite often a topic of interoperability framework. We just made this kind of platform for interoperability, and then we made description of that. It's a bad manner, but sometimes it's working. And in case of Estonia, where I think that one of the good sides were just we were using mostly Estonian our own government money. So it was not very much influence from donor side finances, which enables us to just make step-by-step, long-run, sustainable development. Okay, so it has been one of the interesting things which I can't recommend all others, but in case of Estonia, it was working interestingly, and we still sometimes doing projects and then just looking if it's fitting into this bigger framework. Okay, and then it's continuously talks about coordination and organizational setup. In several countries, it's very strong centralized unit. And we can call it like a management type of unit. And I think that also it was example from Singapore where the CIOs were belonging to the central organization but sharing the fields of governance. So they're just working in different fields, but organizationally they were sitting in the same organization. So in case of Estonia, we never got enough political support and money to build big organization to manage all these steps. But then we just were able just to concentrate pretty small number of people. I remember I started from 2 persons, and Uno Wallner was one of my first colleagues. Just now he is main IT architect in Estonia. And then today this coordination unit is only, I think, 9 persons, and it's really just small. So it's not so strongly influencing sectoral development, but still, if all the other frameworks are in place and it's working. And then, of course, when just all those countries we are working, we see also some mixture of different centralization, decentralization. It's obvious that it would be very good to have a nice balance between those things. Okay, so and also pictures are influenced very much by top decision makers. So it was said several times that government, high-level government officials are thinking about e-government as a topic of IT guys, IT persons. So we saw several times where just when I was talking with politicians that they are just thinking about technology, not about e-government as such. Then it was a question about programming, some interesting question about how you program e-government. So just they were figuring out that probably if e-government is not very good, then it's a question of programming, nothing else. Then we thought that even in some ministry level people were saying that, okay, we have legislation in place, just IT guys, please look at the legislation and implement it. So it's also not very clear understanding from top management, and of course it's about how much internet you have. It's arguments about you don't need to e-government because internet is slow and people doesn't have access to your services, and then it's too much focus on policy and too much focus on project-based development. And even 2 months ago, I hear from one country's explanation or question that why we need 2 governments. We have e-government and government, and why we need to have 2 governments. So it's clearly showing that from IT people or from e-government people's side, it's a continuous explanation why and what is important things. And of course, at the end, it's influencing the organization, which in several cases giving just low mandate for IT people, e-government people, just not to have access to top management. And also it's influencing the legislation, it's influencing the money, and at the end also it's influencing the technology. So there are just very different aspects which should be taken into account. And when looking to this World Bank survey about management, so they made it about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. There are 3 or 4 different models. And of course in Estonia we started from this model 1, which was decentralized implementation, decentralized policy making, and at the moment we are sharing this, we are just very much inside of model 3, which is decentralized implementation and centralized policy making, which in my mind working in our region. Okay, so if we just list the most important aspects from my experience, I just would like to stress very much a stable and functioning organizational setup for coordination. which is even more important sometimes than these info-political principles, which can be discussed and developed, but without organizational setup, it doesn't work. Of course, leadership and political will is existing, and I never saw in Estonia also that some political party told that, okay, e-government, we don't need to have e-government. But if you look at the budgets, annual budgets in the e-government sector, then you see that which are more priority questions for government. And then, of course, info-political principles, we have several interesting principles, but we don't have enough time just to explain them today. Hopefully this parallel session about Estonia is focusing on some of the issues. Then in case of Estonia, it was very, very strong influence from private sector. Because if you look into from banking sector side, for example, banks have pretty same motivation like e-government, just to offer service to citizens, because it's a question of efficiency and income of the banks. And it's also something similar in the government sector, only just government, of course, not very much looking to the income side, but it's efficiency, definitely. And then legal and fiscal frameworks, and only not the least important, but just put in the ranking list this architecture or technology, because if all the others are not very much functioning, then this technology doesn't work, or it doesn't help very much to focus on technology. So this is a management structure of Estonian e-government, which basically, if it's working here. Okay, so in case of Estonia, it's a coordination type of management. It's a pretty small department which is running and responsible on basically strategy building, legislation, and influence in budget side. And okay, so back. And then different ministries which are just relatively independent and cooperating with this, using this special work groups of ministries and work group of counties. And it's also interesting that when we were starting, we started from State Chancellor, which is Prime Minister office, which is working very well because of all the ministries are looking and listening to Prime Minister. Much better than if you just working in some of the ministries, which was just the case at the latest stage where the management was moved from Prime Minister office to Minister of Economic Affairs. This is a picture which how it's working in Estonia still, and starting from 1993, so it has been very stable long time. This is an example from Albanian structure, which is, they started from the direct supervision from Prime Minister, and then they have National Agency of Information Society, and then they have a political advisor and close to Prime Minister, and then they have just coordination mechanism below. So it's in some sense pretty similar like in Estonian case, except some of the duties which are divided in the different ways. And then this is a picture from, I think that it was started from Moldova, and it was discussed, and this is something which is. So if you look to different organizational structures, they have pretty similar frameworks in Europe, and then this country's e-governance academy is working. So it's pretty decentralized. Even in the political level, they would like to centralize a little bit more on some of the aspects quite often, but it was not possible to centralize all the processes. So it's in the management sense, it's pretty decentralized picture with central coordination of management of the policies and strategies. Okay, so just a few words about tools, of course. When we are thinking about management and coordination in horizontal level, we have basically two possibilities to do it in government. One thing is to have access to legislation, to put the laws on place, to change something, and second is budget, money. And then one thing which, in my understanding, is quite complicated in those countries who are using project money from donor organizations. when we are looking for different project-based money, then after finishing the projects, they don't have sustainable development further. So we saw many countries also that huge projects are stopping after implementation because there are no budget from state budget to guarantee the continuation of the project. So it was not the case in Estonia. Just now in Estonia we are using widely European Union framework money. But before that we spent all the time approximately 1% from state budget for sustainable development of e-government. And I think that this was, in sense of management and coordination, one of the success factors. And second success factor was that we never had enough money just for development. So we had to figure out the cooperation, coordination in a way that that everything is continuing and growing, but we don't have enough money just to do. So we never made very many different separate projects, and then actually it was very good decision, I think more than 10 years ago, that we were looking for integration of different platforms and systems in very early stage. And so, lesson learned. I think that the most important in policy planning is a process, not the result as a paper. It has been just one topic, and we saw many countries, they have very good policies, but nothing happened. And we saw some countries where they never had very good policy on the paper, but when good things are happening. So second is that it would be important to have very good access to high decision makers in government, but not to be too close to party politics. So in many countries we saw that top of e-government was a member of some party, and after elections all this organization was stopped and then renewed, and starting from beginning after next few years. Sustainability of planning and running of e-government systems is widely depending on sustainable budget planning. So it's also one of the issues which I think that in the case of Estonia and many other countries is very important. And then a critical issue is about knowledge level of CIOs, IT managers of ministries. We are just very much focused on training and support from central level. And of course, also, last but not least, good support from private sector and academia, as it was told also here. But what interesting with academia, I'm just coming also from academia, but not academia of e-government, but Institute of Cybernetics many years ago. So what we saw in Estonia and some other countries also, that it's important to have very good relation with academic development and studies. But you can't rely too much on academic things as well, because we saw some countries where they are relying on basically on academics organization in e-government development, and it's at the end it was not very successful because of going too much deeper into academic studies and this field and no practical results. Thank you very much, and sorry, just I spent a little bit more time than promised.
Okay, thanks. That's really good. Now we've got two examples from Europe, one from South America, and now one from the world leader in e-government. From Korea, who was #1 in the UN rankings in 2010. We don't know yet whether they will keep that top position in the UN rankings coming out in about 3 or 4 months. That will be interesting. I like very much when you said that it was Arvo, more about the process than the policy. I can see that now in the UK. In fact, in the UK, in the early years, it was about policy rather than process to get things going. Then they failed, or failed is too strong a word, they came unstuck because they still thought it was mainly about policy and top-down, and the process wasn't good enough to carry it forward. So I think what you said is, I can see that in other countries too. It's interesting. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay.
Okay. No problem. Can you switch to the Korea, please?
South Korea.
Okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bong. I'm working for the United Nations Project Office on Governance in the Republic of Korea. It's my great honor and pleasure to have an opportunity to present today on e-government development of Korea. I believe it is crucial to study e-government development of each country prior to establishing national policies for informatization. In this respect, I hope my presentation will serve to broaden your understanding on Korea's e-government. My presentation today will cover 5 issues: a brief history of Korea's e-government strategy, e-government structure, and its key achievements and success factors, and problems and challenges which Korea's e-government faces. And lastly, some suggestions for the future will be presented. Let me first look at the overview and history of Korea's e-government. From the bottom upward, Korea's e-government initiatives started from the late 1970s. Until year 2000, our efforts had been mainly focused on establishing infrastructures such as computerizing public administration, building administration networks, and constructing nationwide broadband networks. During the launch and diffusion stages, the basic structure of e-government was formed by focusing on development of services to the citizens and improving internal business processes. In particular, we succeeded in enacting the Act on e-government in this period. From 2008 onward can be seen as a mature stage. Korea has placed particular emphasis on promoting utilization and integration by linking and incorporating public and private sector initiatives. Within the government, there are 2 main driving forces for e-government. One is the Presidential Committee on Government Information Strategies, and the other is the Ministry of Public Administration and Security. Role of organizations. The Presidential Committee supervises and evaluates the deployment of e-government, while MOPAS develops nationwide e-government policies and builds advanced e-government infrastructure. Also, National Information Society Agency provides technical and project management support to MOPAS as well as the Presidential Committee. And other respective ministries serve to implement action plans for e-government projects. Current status of Korea's e-government. According to the United Nations, e-government can be classified into 4 following levels: emerging, enhanced, transactional, and seamless. It is reported in the UN analysis that Korean government has currently completed level 3 and is advancing to level 4. As of now, it is evaluated to have achieved 62% of the level 4 stage. We are aiming to upgrade and expand our e-government systems to provide unlimited services to citizens and businesses through integration of back office systems. Overall, as you can see from this slide, Korea's e-government was ranked first out of 192 UN member countries according to the 2010 UN e-government survey. More importantly, Korea was ranked first not only on the e-government development index, but also on the online participation index. In addition, Korea's e-government has been recognized for its systems and services by many international organizations. The Korea Immigration Smart Service, KISS, received the UN Public Service Award in 2007. And also, Information Network Village was nominated as a winner in category 3 this year. The home tax system was selected as a best practice in the area of e-tax administration by OECD. Additionally, Korea Intellectual Property Office Net was recognized as an international standard by the World Intellectual Property Organization. Next, I'll briefly introduce Korea's e-government structure. Back office services. One of the main supporting structures is back office systems, which have two stages. In the first stage, back office services are computerized to develop standardized administration system and to expand deployment. And in the second stage, they assist to connect all the systems between the departments, which can enhance efficiency and transparency of e-government. Now I would like to introduce several examples of our back office systems. First one is governmental IDC. In order to effectively manage all systems, governmental consolidated data center has been established, which has allowed flawless operations to be achieved, IT management to be improved, and security environment to be consolidated. Government information sharing. The second one is government information sharing. To minimize required documents and office visits, government information sharing has expanded into the entire public sector and financial institutions. In addition, back office also has Onnara business processing system. This integrated online management of public processes has enabled policy accountability to be improved and government efficiency to be enhanced. Next, front office services. Another major structure of our e-government is front office service, which also have two stages. In the first stage, they provide online service in each sectors, such as UNIFES or e-tax. And in the next stage, they provide connection between individual services to improve citizens' convenience. One of the online service examples is e-customs, so-called UNIFES. This system has allowed to reduce the time of customs process from 1 day to 2 minutes, and also the waiting time of airline passengers from 40 minutes to 25 minutes on average. Second example of online service is e-patent, so-called KeePonet. This service is open for 24 hours, allowing every citizen to have access whenever they need. Another example is e-procurement CONEPS. CONEPS' one-stop process of all public biddings has enhanced efficiency as well as transparency through reducing the bidding time from 20 hours to 1 minute on average. This last system I'll mention is online civil service Min124. Min124 is online service for the citizens to efficiently process their inquiry, petition, applications, as well as issuance without visiting government organizations. Key achievement and success factors. Now, let's take a look at key achievements from Korea's e-government development as well as its success factors, which have contributed to Korea's international recognition in the field of e-government. Our key achievements are shown in this slide. First, e-government has enhanced the transparency and efficiency of the government. Second, it eventually led to the improved quality of public service. Third, e-government policies contribute to advancing the infrastructure. Furthermore, the IT sector in Korea has brought about positive impact to its economy. Among many success factors for Korea's e-government, the following 5 factors are the most distinguished ones. First success factor is strong government leadership. Since the 1980s, the very beginning of Korea's e-government, the top government officers, including the president, understood the importance of e-government and were actively involved in supporting and promoting it. This is why Korea was able to establish strategic and sustainable e-government plans. Second is IT governance. The Korean government has effectively and efficiently operated government-wide organizations such as the E-Government Special Committee and relevant ministries in the progress of planning, mediating, and implementing. The third is customer-oriented e-government services. In the past, most administrative services to citizens were government-centric, causing dissatisfaction and complaints among them. Therefore, the Korean government has turned its approach to customer-oriented e-government services as a top priority to meet the public needs. Lastly, e-government projects require vast knowledge in technology. Such challenges were addressed by selecting experienced system integration companies and specialized solution vendors for system establishment, and by applying practical technology solutions for appropriate e-government services. The next topic is the problems and challenges Korea's e-government is facing now. First, there has been an increasing trend in cybersecurity threat. These cyber threats are not limited to individual countries, but affecting the entire world. Second challenge that we are facing is digital privacy threat. Another important issue is accompanying IT development is digital divide. As we can see in the graphs, the index is steadily decreasing every year, but there are still exists around a 30% gap. Fourth, internet addiction is an issue that we must also work to solve. The last issue is cyber ethics. Efforts for solving the problems and challenges. In order to improve our capacity to prevent further cyber attacks, the Korean government is pursuing the following strategies. First, specialized cyber security personnel as well as information security budget are being expanded. In addition to this effort, it is critical to strengthen international collaboration against cyber threats. This is because cyber threats are not just regional but international problems. Second, in order to bridge the digital divide, IT training and the free use of PC distribution programs for the disadvantaged are being implemented. Third, to address internet addiction problems, life cycle-oriented preventative education is being strengthened. Lastly, the Korean government is implementing internet ethics courses from primary schools and is also partnering with civil society to create self-motivated clean cyberspace. In the last section of this presentation, I would like to raise several suggestions for the future of e-government. In terms of coordination and management in the development of e-government, I think this part might be useful and informative to you. There are 6 major tasks of e-leaders to develop a successful e-government. Customer-oriented services, appropriate legal frameworks, sustained investment, efficient organization structure, change management, and public-private partnership. Let me explain one by one. To promote successful e-government, planners must focus their effort in bringing about customer-oriented e-government services, which prioritize the needs of citizens, companies, and other organizations, enabling the government to build a trustful relationship with them. Second, appropriate legal frameworks for each phase of e-government implementation should be considered to ensure a positive and enabling environment. Third, there should be a consistent investment which may allow e-government to firmly operate and develop. Every year, 1% of the national budget was invested into e-government construction. And the Information and Telecommunication Promotion Fund was created and utilized at the initial stage of e-government construction. Also, powerful and efficient organization structure should be established for the effective management of e-government. Supervisory committee under the president or prime minister were established to drive e-government. In addition, CIO for central and regional e-government were assigned to create strong support structures. And along with these structures, specialized e-government technical support agencies were formed as well. And the fifth suggestion is that there should be a consistent change management of public officers in a changing e-government environment to enhance efficiency of their works and ensure their job security. Lastly, efficient division of labor and clear assignment of roles and responsibilities, as well as cooperation between public and private partnership, are necessary to maintain and develop a good e-government. I believe these suggestions for the future may allow e-leaders to develop successful e-government. Thank you.
Thanks. That's the secret of how to be #1 in the world. Okay, so you know where to put the questions afterwards. Now, last but by no means least, we move to the Gulf, and a good example from Oman, one of the upcoming countries there, thinking and heavily investing in e-government. So I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Omar.
Thank you. Okay, let's try to set this up first. Okay, I can use helping hand. Yeah. Okay, first I would like to thank the organizers and to thank Mr. Millard for giving me this opportunity to speak at this conference. And actually, I don't have much time, maybe 1 minute left for me or something?
No. we started late, so we can finish about 6
okay.
past, okay?
No problem, okay. I think what I will present to you today is really Oman e-governance in practice. Actually, we've been hearing throughout the day two keywords today, that is e-government and e-governance. But still, you know, we need to really differentiate a little bit between the two. And I will just divide my presentation quickly over these two keywords. I will give you in the beginning first where we are in terms of e-government in Oman, and later on how we define e-governance in Oman and the way we approached it. Okay, as I said, the agenda today is around those 5 items. What is e-government, drive for digital transformation, and e-Oman digital strategy. I will just give you a brief about the digital strategy that Oman adopted since few years now, and really how we in Oman looked at e-governance and how did we approach e-governance during the drive for e-government. So there are, I'm sure you know, a lot of definitions for e-government, and you know, from all these definitions that you already saw from previous presentations, and that it's really a whole transformation of the public sector, how the public sector interacts with the citizens and residents that are there, and how it introduced new delivery channels from the traditional delivery channels. That's basically, you know, every definition you will come across basically talks about the same thing. And you know, and here in Oman, the drive for digital transformation actually came from the top leader, His Majesty Sultan Qaboos, the Sultan of Oman. Really give a lot of attention and focus to digital transformation, and he encouraged all government entities really to use ICT in their business. Therefore, from that vision, His Majesty has established ITA, Information Technology Authority, where I come from, and it was set up in 2006 really to look after the implementation of e-Oman digital strategy. And that digital strategy I will just touch on now. That digital strategy really, it's basically address these six pillars that are there. The society and human capital development is one of the major pillars that it addresses. Enhancing e-government and e-services, another pillar. ICT industry development, governance, standards, regulation is another pillar. National infrastructure development, and there is it's another pillar, and promotion and awareness, promoting the use of E and the ICT and so forth. Those are the major 6 pillars that the Oman digital strategy looks after. And actually, in these, each one of those pillars is translated into many initiatives and many projects. And I will not go through this presentation of the project and the initiative that we took there, but just briefly, as an example, in society and human capital development, we saw the need that in order for us to go to e-government, we need the government itself to adopt ICT and so forth, and to get used to it. And so there is a program really to train all the government employees that are there, and so far we have trained over 50,000 of them in ICT. Similar programs are for the community. We have established so far 20 community knowledge centers across Oman, and they give free training, they give access to the internet, they give all kinds of services to the public, and so forth in each one. And there are many others. Specialized training is also in that, and so forth. I will not touch on all of them, and as I said, we touched on governance and standards and regulation there as a pillar, and what we have done there is we created really some frameworks there that are used in the country. National infrastructure development, I will show you just in the next slide some project that we have executed there. And promotion awareness, as I said, society, human capital development, and e-services, and ICT industry development. Those are some examples of completed national projects. Those are operational national projects that are now. We have one government network spanning the whole government into one network for exchange of information and so forth. We have e-government service portal where citizens and residents can go there and find out information about the different services that the government gives, and also to execute e-services. There is also we have established a national data center for those entities really to deploy their services fast. We have put for them an infrastructure there where we have a national data center equipped there. They just come there and put, hook up their equipment, and here you go. We are in the run, and now we are looking really to upgrade this data center to see the opportunity of cloud computing and private cloud, how that can be in that sense. After the buzzword cloud is cleared, it's still every day I hear the cloud, every day I get confused about it. It's still not clear. Okay. Then also the national e-payment gateway. We have established a local national e-payment gateway. No need to go through the international ones. In a standard e-governance framework, this is also one of the projects that we will talk about. Security framework, or what we have established, a center of security, actually. Center of security looking after the government network security point of view, looking at all the securing the whole government entities and so forth. CERT also is one of the things that are there. We are also implementing now public key infrastructure and digital signatures as project and so forth. And there are so many others. As I said, I just briefly touch on the digital strategy. I think this is not the right word, the next strategic focus, no, but we will continue focusing in the next 2 to 3 years in really developing the industry, the IT industry, and really enabling the society and the individuals. And the main one is really looking at delivering more citizen-centric e-services. Really, when I mean citizen-centric, meaning looking at it from the citizen point of view, actually, not from the government of view. Actually, I liked what the president today, this morning in the keynote said. If you just put the forms and code it through HTML and put them there, they are still the same ones. There is no change that is happening there. So we really need to look at it from the citizen's point of view and re-engineer those processes. So what is e-governance? This is just briefly about the digital transform, the e-government in Oman, and the Oman digital strategy. And actually that strategy, just worth mentioning, it was really approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Oman in 2003. And since then, Oman we've been executing that digital strategy, which spans all these 6 pillars that are there. And as I said, there are many initiatives and projects in that sense. Now, going through the journey of digital transformation, really there has to be some governance in place, really to go hand in hand with that particular journey. And when we looked at what we mean, in Oman we really like simple things. We some big words, we tailor them and put them to fit our needs. So maybe we look at things in a simple way. So when we looked at e-governance and how we can do e-governance while doing e-government. So we asked ourselves what is the difference between e-government and e-governance and how to implement it. And we looked at actually references to many standards, many organizations that are there, and we come up with something that we think it fits our requirement. First, we come up with the definition of this. E-governance is the development, deployment, and enforcement of policies, laws, and regulations necessary to support the functioning of knowledge society as well as of e-government in our drive for digital transformation. So this is how we define e-governance. And the approach that we took for e-governance is that e-governance is concerned with 4 areas that are there. Structure, which I mean by that is to define roles and responsibilities while we're going through the digital transformation. And also frameworks. Those frameworks will define the standards and processes that need to go with that. And also laws, and those laws will enforce actually the regulations that we put in place. And also policies, and those policies will define the conformance and behavior. So this picture gives to us how we go about governance while we're doing e-government. So the structure in there, in the middle is ITA, Information Technology Authority. As a structure, it was, as I said, it was issued by royal decree from His Majesty the Sultan to look after the implementation of the Oman digital strategy. And over there, it's mandated by law to really drive those type of projects. And also in the government agencies, there are representatives. There are committees that looks after IT in the government and how they transform. And from those ministries also, there is representatives that that coordinate with ITA, that ITA can coordinate with them in really implementing those policies and regulations and e-services and so forth. Okay, in terms of frameworks, we have defined 2 main frameworks developed by us in ITA. The first one, we called it Oman e-governance framework. And I will explain a little bit about Oman e-governance framework. And Oman e-government architecture framework, which is actually a subset of the above. And as you will see from the next slide. So Oman e-governance framework is a set of standard best practices and processes management systems to enhance the delivery of government services in alignment with the vision and mission of ITA. So the framework itself, as you see from the picture, if it's clear, consists of the Oman e-government architecture framework, which is, we call it OGAF, similar like TOGAF, but this is OGAF. And that is actually it's an enterprise architecture for the government, and we'll talk about it. And then there is the process management part in the right side, which here you'll find different processes like performance measurement, project management, and so forth. This is the processes part of the framework, of the governance framework. And there is, down there is actually the standard management processes, where you will find the working groups, the people part. So if you look at this, it's the governance framework address the people, and address the processes, which is the right side, and address the technology. And any governance framework, in my opinion, should address these 3 areas anyhow. Okay, so Oman e-government architecture framework, which is the technology part of the governance framework. It is a whole of a government enterprise architecture. You know, the reason for it is really to facilitate the interoperability and integration among government IT systems. We need a set of standards really to make that happen. And it was launched in 2010, and you know, when we so far took this one to one of the organizations, the Open Group organization, actually, where we participated with this one, and we won a prize there. We are thinking of taking it to another level. And actually, this part, in general, this one contains architecture guidelines, principles, and technical standards. So, and it consists of 4 main architectures as follows. It consists of the business architecture, where there we list, you know, we look at the government as one, and we list there all the government lines of business, what the government does in general, regardless of the ministry that does that. We look at it, you know, from the government perspective. And we listed there all the government lines of business that it does, and also further classify that into business functions. And, okay, back. Oh. Am I in the right place? Okay. And then after that, the second part of Oman e-government architecture framework, OGAF, is the solution architecture, where there we really listed all the government portfolio of applications that are there. And also with that, then this is from the standard part also, we listed there some standards to be used when entities develop applications. And the third part of it is the information architecture. Actually, that is really the data hubs. From looking at the government lines of business, we define the common data hubs that need to be really to be put there. And those are common to the whole government. And also with that, with the data management part, is really putting standards when really putting, you know, on data management and so forth. And lastly, the last part of the OGAF is really the technical architecture. The technical architecture where we defined the technical infrastructure that will support each one of those layers. And there we have put some technology areas like service access, service integration, platform, network, data centers, and so forth, where for each one of those we have defined standards, certain standards, that when a government entity embarks, or even suppliers to the government, when they supply something or they tender, they are part of a tender, they have to comply with all these standards. Okay, this is just the same one, Oman e-government framework, and how we leverage each one, in each one of those. For example, the solution architecture really support the government lines of business. And, you know, and from the government lines of business, we discovered the common data hubs that need to be there to be used for the whole government, and so forth. And you know, the solution architecture also leverage the technical architecture that is put there. Okay, that was the first part. Then the second part of the governance, if you remember from the governance, what we need is policies. And working with other government agencies, we have defined few policies, and we are continuing to really put more policies in place for the whole government. We have an IT security policy for the whole government that we put in place, and also we have put some central initiatives. So we passed few policies of using those central initiatives by the government entities. And also when procuring or doing a project in IT, there is also policies concerned with that the government need to abide with, the ministries need to abide with. And we are working with other policies also. In terms of laws, as I said, okay. In terms of, this is before last. In terms of laws also, if you can see from the board here, we have put forward, we have Oman issued many laws that are there. And the recent one was the cyber crime law, and that is to prevent crime, misuse of information. And also in 2008, we have Oman issued the electronic transaction law, and that is really to legalize electronic transactions in Oman and digital signatures and so forth. So really this is the essence of you know, in brief on what we're doing. In summary, IT has begun its e-government journey. 4 key areas for successful e-governance. In any e-government journey, there has to be an e-governance also along the side of that journey, and that need to be looked at. And for the e-governance, structure is very important, and also frameworks are also very important, and that is to really to define those standards and processes. Policies is also very important to ensure conformance, as I said, just to reiterate on that. And also laws are very important, and they are required for the enforcement at the national level of that governance. This is what I have, and thank you.
Thank you very much for being brief, and but also very interesting, full presentation. I know Oman quite well, but I think it's really interesting what's going on there. So I thank you for that. I mean, we're actually just 2 hours since we started, so we are now running the overtime. And I think the next session starts at 30:30, or maybe I don't know if it's going to be delayed. But if anybody has questions to any of the speakers, it's probably a good idea to do that now, just for a few minutes. Otherwise, get coffee and you can talk to people in the coffee break. But are there any burning observations or questions? Or it's been a long session, 2 hours, of course, right? Lots of things on the table. You're sort of all punch drunk. Any burning issues? Any other comments from the other speakers who want to make something? It's just one comment. It strikes me there's an interesting difference between the sort of top-down policies and providing frameworks on the one hand, and the actual processes and the management sort of day-to-day on the other, maybe in different countries. And I think Arvo from Estonia was stressing very much the latter. And I found that experience also in the UK, that there had been a failure with the process on the ground, although the policies were okay. I don't know whether you have any comments on that from Korea or from Oman or from Colombia. I mean, the policies may be fantastic, but it's really the people who implement them. And how do you ensure that that takes place in a successful way? Do you have any comments on that?
No, but I can come. See, I think things need to be taken gradually. Yeah, and I will give an example really in Oman now. We are going through the process of, for example, as an example for e-voting or i-voting. But how do we do it? In 15th of October next month, we have the the new cycle of election for the Shura Council. And for that, the first step that we have done is really to, we have, of course, everyone in Oman now has an ID card. That is that process been for a while, even before Estonia maybe. I don't know, Peter. Okay, but that is there. So now what we have put in that chip of the card is really a module for e-voting. That is now in 15th of October, people will come with their ID and just using their ID, not the traditional way, because there is and in the vision next time probably, or in the future to come, there is no need even to come to the centers for voting. That could be done from convenient places. So gradual steps towards policies and so forth would be best.
Yeah, and monitoring things as you go along, being adaptive and able to change quite quickly when it's necessary. But.
Okay. I think the ICEGOV normally maybe possible to understand is the evolution of the government, traditional government. But we think the e-vote not necessarily is the evolution of the vote. But the culture of the vote not necessarily change if you have the possibility to vote electronic vote. It is the culture for the people. We understand what be the possibility to build the public policy about the e-democracy. The possibility to exercise, for example, the crowdsourcing, or the possibility to listen to people, give opportunity to the people, offer solution, innovation in the solution. For us is very important. And in the e-participation is the possibility to the people share information, the opportunity to the people share opportunities to the solution of the problems of the national problems. For example, we have a plan, or actually we have a Crystal Urn. Crystal Urn is at the website when the people have the possibility to send mail to the president and vote for the principal solution of the principal problems with the president discuss what Saturday in each country, in these cities of the country, the president go to these cities and discuss for the different problems. For example, this Saturday is problems of the health, or next Saturday problems of the social security, for example. And the people vote for the topics with the people, the president discuss with the common people. For this is very important to promote the participation. And 2 weeks ago, in the Christian law, the people vote about what the principal procedures or tramits publics is necessary to finish, to end, to cut in the state. And we receive 7,000 opinions of the different, 1,000 opinions of the people. Send the president, please, could this tramit, this services don't function well? Is there maybe tramit of bureaucracy or have the possibility to corruption? I think the role of the ICEGOV in the participation is the evolution of the normal participation, of course, in the framework of the democracy. I think the dreams of the old democracy is the e-democracy, is the dreams of the ICEGOV. No? Thanks.
Okay. Just to sum up, if anybody have any other questions? I've been working in this area about 10, 15 years now, and the one lesson I've learned is that most success builds on failure. And it's the ability to recognize failure and build on it. I think the idea of adapting your process as you go along. The challenge is to fail small and fail early rather than fail big and fail late, if you know what I mean. The banks failed big and failed late. The best e-government management and coordination, I think, if you learn as you go along from your mistakes, and that really, in my view, is about leadership and the quality of the people you have and the middle managers, basically about that. And also getting feedback from, of course, society which you serve, citizens and businesses. That, for me, is the key. Now, I didn't mention the word ICT in that, did I? But that's really the lesson. I think that it's really about human beings and organizations and actually the people who use the services which they provide. That's really the key, and how ICT can leverage that. And that's the lesson for me. So don't be afraid of failure, but learn from it and build on it. I think that's, and I think most of the leaders, e-government leaders, have shown that that is the way to go. So anyway, thanks very much for this interesting session, and time for coffee. And then I think, I don't know where, do you know where we're meeting for the next session, Arvo? No, okay. You work here, you should know, but okay, thanks very much indeed, and look forward to talking to some of you in the next few days. Thank you.